Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber and felt the weight of 1,000 contemptuous eyes upon her shoulders. The chamber was a massive sphere of crystalline walls that reflected the light of distant stars, and within it floated the representatives of 47 different species from across known space. She had stood here many times before, always with the same message, always with the same result. Honored Council, she began, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. I come before you once again to report an act of unprovoked aggression against human civilians. A ripple of what could only be described as amusement passed through the assembled aliens. The Kavroth representative, a massive reptilian creature named Victor, uncoiled from his hovering platform and fixed her with his cold yellow eyes. Another complaint from the humans, he hissed, his translator rendering his words with barely concealed mockery. Tell us, Ambassador, how many of your precious colonists whimper for protection this time? Chen's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. 3 colony ships were destroyed in the Epsilon sector 6 days ago, she said, pulling up holographic displays that showed the wreckage. 2,314 souls, including 412 children, were aboard those vessels when Kavarth raiders opened fire without warning or provocation. The displays showed the twisted metal, the frozen bodies drifting in the void, the desperate final transmissions that had been cut short by weapons fire for a moment. There was silence then. Victor laughed, a horrible rasping sound that echoed through the chamber. Raiders, he said dismissively. Surely the mighty humans do not expect the Kavroth Empire to control every independent ship that flies under our colors. The Epsilon sector is unclaimed space. Your colonists took a risk. They paid the price for their foolishness. The ships were marked with Kavroth Imperial Navy identification codes. Chen shot back, her voice rising slightly. We have the transmission logs. This was not piracy. This was murder sanctioned by your government. Prove it. Victor challenged the Zinthora representative, a collective consciousness speaking through a cluster of insectoid drones. Added its voice to the discussion. The humans speak of murder. The drones buzzed in eerie unison. Yet they forget that they are newcomers to this galaxy. Barely 150 cycles since they achieved faster-than-light travel. Perhaps if humanity focused less on expansion and more on understanding their place in the established order, such tragedies would not occur. Chen felt her hands clench into fists at her sides. 150 years of this 150 years of insults, of condescension, of watching human colonists and merchants and explorers treated like vermin by species who saw themselves as superior. 150 years of restraint. She had joined the diplomatic corps 20 years ago, young and idealistic, believing that patience and reason would eventually win. The day she had watched that idealism die slowly, crushed under the weight of endless humiliation. The Orvelian Combine representative, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering field, spoke in melodious tones that somehow managed to convey disdain. The Council has heard humanity's grievances many times, it sang. Always you come with complaints, with accusations, with demands for justice, yet you offer nothing in return. You hold no significant territory. Your technology is unremarkable. Your military presence is negligible. Why should the Council intervene in disputes that humanity is clearly unable to resolve on its own? Because it is the right thing to do, Chen said quietly. And the chamber erupted in sounds that her translator interpreted as laughter from a dozen different species. The right thing, Victor repeated, his massive frame shaking with mirth. How charmingly primitive. Tell me, Ambassador, do you still believe in fairy tales as well? In monsters under the bed? In the triumph of good over evil? He leaned forward, his breath hot and rank. Even across the distance between them, there is no right or wrong in the galaxy. Little human, he said, there is only strength and weakness. And your species is shown time and again which category you belong to. Chen stood very still somewhere deep inside her. Something that had been stretched tight for 2 decades finally snapped, but her face remained calm. Almost serene, I see, she said softly. Then there's nothing more to discuss. She reached into her diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small data crystal, placing it on the hovering platform before her. For the record, The United Humanity Concordat formally protests this council's refusal to address systematic aggression against our people, she stated, her words now crisp and formal. We have followed every protocol, filed every proper form, exhausted every avenue of peaceful resolution. She looked around the chamber. Meeting as many eyes as she could, we came to this council 150 years ago in peace, she continued. We offered friendship, cooperation, and mutual prosperity. We asked only to be treated with basic dignity. You have answered with contempt. Is the human throwing a tantrum? The Zinthora collective buzzed with amusement. Chen smiled, and something in that smile made several of the nearer representatives shift uncomfortably. No, she said. I am delivering a warning. She turned and began walking toward the chamber exit. You dismiss us as weak because we have not responded to your provocations with violence, she called over her shoulder. You mistake patience for inability, restraint for cowardice. She paused at the doorway and looked back one final time. We tried to be your friends, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We tried to be good neighbors, good partners. Good members of this galactic community. You have rejected every attempt, attacked our ships, killed our people, and laughed at our pain. The chamber had gone very quiet now. So let me be absolutely clear, Chen continued. What happens next is on you. All of you. You had 150 years to choose peace. You chose otherwise. Victor rose to his full imposing height. Are you threatening this council, human? He demanded. No, Chen replied calmly. I am informing you of a change in human policy. We will no longer appeal to your better nature. We will no longer beg for scraps of basic respect. We will no longer restrain ourselves in the hope that you will eventually see reason. She touched her wrist communicator. Activating a secure quantum encrypted channel authorization code, Chonal Phison 7 Delta, she said clearly. Execute protocol Harbinger. Full authorization granted across the chamber. Alien translators struggled to interpret the significance of those words, but in that moment, across human space, in dozens of star systems, encrypted signals were received, vault doors opened, hidden systems activated, and humanity stopped pretending to be harmless and left the chamber without another word, her footsteps echoing in the sudden, uncertain silence behind her. The Galactic Council sat in confusion, not yet understanding what had just happened. They would learn soon enough. Sleeping Giant had finally opened its eyes and it was done being patient. Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane was reviewing tactical reports in his office aboard the UHCV Indomitable, when his personal terminal chimed with an encryption level he had not seen in his entire 30-year career. His hand actually trembled slightly as he entered his command codes. The message was brief. Protocol Harbinger authorized Chunel Fiso M Delta. Execute immediately. For a long moment, Kane simply stared at the screen. Then he stood, straightened his uniform, and touched the ship-wide communication channel. All hands. This is Admiral Kane, he announced, his voice steady and calm. Execute protocol Harbinger. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Throughout the Indomitable, crew members who had served for decades without ever firing a weapon in anger moved to battle stations with practiced efficiency. The real transformation was happening across human space. On hundreds of ships and stations that the galaxy thought it understood, the cargo hauler Prosperity's journey had been making regular runs between Earth and the outer colonies for 20 years, carrying supplies and equipment to distant human settlements. Now her captain, a weathered woman named Maria Santos, input her own authorization codes and watched her ship transform. Exterior panels slid aside, revealing batteries of railguns and missile tubes. What had appeared to be cargo pods detached, exposing point defense laser arrays. The ship's reactor, always running at a fraction of its true capacity, surged to full power within 10 minutes. The Prosperity's journey had become what she had always truly been, a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to take on a small fleet. And she was far from alone. Every human merchant vessel underwent the same transformation. Every mining station revealed itself as a fortress bristling with weapons. Every science outpost activated military-grade sensor arrays and defensive systems across 40 human-controlled systems. The truth became impossible to hide. Humanity had not been building a merchant fleet for the past century. They had been building an armada on the orbital shipyard above New Terra. Chief Engineer Robert Chen watched as the construction berths that had supposedly been building colony habitats began assembling their true products dreadnoughts, massive warships 4 kilometers long. Their hulls reinforced with metamaterial armor, their weapon systems, incorporating technology that humanity had quietly developed while the galaxy dismissed them as backwards. "How long have we been preparing for this?" his young assistant asked, staring in awe at the warships taking shape since the beginning. Chen replied quietly, "Since the very first time the Council laughed at us. Since the first human merchant was killed by pirates while the Galactic Patrol looked the other way. But why hide it?" The assistant pressed. "If we had this kind of strength all along, why did we let them treat us like weaklings?" Chen finished, "Because humanity learned a hard lesson in our own past. We nearly destroyed ourselves in the resource wars. We killed billions of our own people fighting over scraps of a single planet." He gestured at the warships being assembled. "We learned that strength without restraint leads only to destruction." He continued, "So we chose to be restrained, to be patient, to give peace every possible chance. But we also learned that being weak makes you a victim. So we prepared to speak softly and carry a big stick." The assistant murmured something like that. Chen agreed. "We just kept the stick hidden until we needed it at that moment across the galaxy in the Tau Ceti system." The Kavaroth Empire was about to learn exactly how big that stick, Wasfekther's nephew, Commander Sekvon, led a fleet of 300 Kavarth warships toward the human colonies in Tau. SETI intelligence reports indicated 12 million humans lived there. Spread across 4 planets and 24 orbital habitats, the plan was simple: overwhelming force, quick conquest, and present the Galactic Council with a fait accompli by the time the humans could mount a response. Tau Ceti would be Kavath, Territoriusek Venes. Ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge and immediately began accelerating toward the inhabited worlds, sir. "We are detecting energy signatures," his sensor officer reported. "Multiple human vessels on intercept courses. How many?" Sekvan demanded. "I am having difficulty determining exact numbers," the officer replied, sounding confused. "The signatures are much stronger than expected for civilian ships." "It matters not," Sekvan declared. "All ships battle formation. Prepare to." His words died as his tactical display updated. He had assumed were perhaps 20 or 30 lightly armed patrol boats. Resolved into a different picture entirely, 147 warships, each one massing more than his own heavy cruisers, and they were accelerating far faster than should have been possible evasive maneuvers. He shouted. But it was already too late. The human fleet opened fire at a range that Sekvan's own weapons could not match Relgen rounds. Accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, tore through Kavarth shields as if they were tissue. Paper missiles with AI guidance systems that could outthink Kavaroth Point. Defenses found their targets with terrifying accuracy energy weapons that ran on principles Kavaroth science had not yet discovered. Carved through armor like hot knives through butter and, worst of all, the humans fought with a creativity and unpredictability that Kavaroth tactical doctrine could not counter. Sekvan tried to concentrate his forces for a massed assault. Human ships scattered and attacked from unexpected angles when he attempted to protect his vulnerable troop carriers. Human strike craft appeared from nowhere and crippled them when he ordered a fighting retreat. Human faster-than-light interdiction fields trapped his ships in normal space. The battle lasted 17 hours at the end of it. 847. Kavaroth ships had been reduced to expanding clouds of debris survivors. Zero the humans had taken no prisoners, granted no quarter, shown no mercy, and they had broadcast every moment of the battle on open frequencies that reached across. Known Space Admiral Kane's voice accompanied the footage, calm and utterly without emotion for 150 years. "Humanity sought peace," he said as the images showed Kavath ships dying by the dozen for 150 years. "We endured insults, attacks, and murder. We believed that patience would be rewarded, that reason would prevail. A Kavath carrier exploded in spectacular fashion on the screen. We were wrong," Kane continued. You mistook our restraint for weakness, our patience for cowardice, our mercy for inability. More ships died. Their crews vaporized or frozen in the void. This is what humanity is when you leave us no choice, Kane's voice stated. We did not want this. We tried every alternative. But you have forced our hand. The final image showed the Tau Ceti colonies untouched and safe. Their human inhabitants going about their lives. We defended our people, Kane concluded. We will continue to defend them. The next move is yours. Choose wisely, the broadcast and did across the galaxy. In the halls of power of every major species, beings who had laughed at humanity's weakness now watched the footage in stunned silence. Zinthra Collective's queens gathered to discuss the implications. Orvelian Combined Strategic Council ran simulations and came to a terrifying conclusion, and Vikther, Supreme Commander of the Kavath Empire, stared at the empty space where his nephew's fleet had been and felt something he had not experienced in his long life: fear, because the humans had not just won a battle, they had sent a message. A message was heard loud and clear across every star system in known space. Humanity was done being nice. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session exactly 30 hours after the Tau Ceti massacre. That was what they were calling it now, a massacre. If remind that the Kavrath had come as invaders, never mind that they had intended to conquer and subjugate 12 million humans. Sheer totality of their destruction had shaken every member species to their core ambassador. Chen stood once again in the center of the chamber. But this time, the atmosphere was very different. There was no laughter, no contempt, only fear and anger in equal measure. The human delegation will explain itself, the council speaker demanded. A Jorvian, whose crystalline structure pulsed with agitated colors. You have committed an act of unprecedented violence against a council member species. We defended our territory and our citizens against an unprovoked military invasion, Chen replied calmly. The same right to self-defense that every council species claims for itself. You annihilated an entire fleet. Vikther roared, his earlier arrogance replaced by barely controlled rage. Not defeated, not disabled, obliterated. There were no survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. No, Chen agreed, her voice still level. There was no mercy. Just as there was no mercy when your raiders destroyed our colony ships. Just as there has been no mercy in the hundreds of attacks against human civilians over the past century and a half. She looked directly at the Kavarath commander. You came to Tau Ceti with 300 ships to conquer our people. She said, what mercy did you intend to show them? Vikther had no answer. The Zinthra Collective's drones buzzed with agitation regardless of provocation. The scale of your response is unacceptable, the hive mind declared. Humanity must be disciplined, must be taught that such aggression will not be tolerated. Chen smiled. And it was not a pleasant expression by all means, she said softly. Try the chamber erupted in outrage over the chaos. Chen raised her voice. For 150 years, you have tested humanity's patience. You pushed and pushed, assuming we would never push back. You were wrong. She pulled up holographic displays, showing human military assets across known space. The council members stared in shock at the true scale of humanity's forces. This is what we are, Chen stated. This is what we have always been. We chose not to show you, because we hoped reason would prevail. That hope is now dead. You deceived us, the Orvelian Combine representative accused. You hid your true strength, infiltrated our space with disguised warships, violated every principle of transparent coexistence. We prepared for the day you would force us to act, Chen corrected. That day has come. She transmitted a document to every council member simultaneously. These are humanity's terms, she announced. Full reparations for every documented attack on human citizens and property over the past 150 years. Territorial concessions in the border regions. A complete restructuring of the Council's charter to include genuine protections for all member species. Not just the powerful ones. Preposterous. Multiple representatives shouted non-negotiable. Chen replied, you have one standard week to respond. Choose wisely. The Zinthera Collective did not choose wisely. The hive mind. accustomed to being one of the Council's dominant powers, decided that humanity needed to be taught a lesson if the humans could destroy a Kavarth fleet. Then the Zinthera would strike at the heart of human power. They would destroy Earth itself. Collective deployed its most powerful weapon. A planet killer that used quantum disruption technology to tear worlds apart at the atomic level. It was launched from a Zinthera shipyard in the Deneb system. Targeted at Sol, protected by 3 full hive fleets, it never reached its destination 3 light-years from Earth. The weapon and its escorts encountered something that every astronomical survey had listed as a natural nebula. The nebula was not natural, it was a network of human defense platforms. Thousands of them, hidden within clouds of ionized gas and operating in complete electromagnetic silence. The platforms activated simultaneously. Planet Killer and all 3 Zinthora fleets ceased to exist in approximately 40 seconds this time. Admiral Kane's message was even shorter. "That was your one chance," he said. His image broadcast across every channel in known space. "The next weapon aimed at a human world will result in us aiming back. And we will not miss in the Zinthera Collective's home system." The Queens felt fear ripple through their shared consciousness. Humans had casually destroyed a weapon that represented decades of research and trillions in resources, and they had done it 3 light-years from their homeworld. Other defenses did they have? What other secrets were they hiding? Ambassador Chen returned to the council chamber 48 hours later this time. She did not wait to be recognized. The Zinthera Collective attempted to destroy Earth. She announced without preamble, they failed. Their weapon and 3 fleets, our debris-shocked silence, greeted her words. Humanity would be within its rights to demand satisfaction. She continued to require reparations, territory. Even regime change within the collective. The Zinthera drones trembled, however, Chen said, and allowed a small pause. "We are not interested in conquest. We never were. We simply want what we have always wanted, to be left in peace, to be treated with basic respect, to be allowed to exist without constant threat." She looked around the chamber. "But we will no longer beg for these things," she stated firmly. "We will no longer appeal to your better nature or hope that you will eventually see reason from this moment forward. Humanity will take what it needs and defend what it has." The Orvelian Combine's representative spoke carefully. "What exactly do you want, Ambassador?" "I already told you," Chen replied. "Reparations, territory, and reform." She transmitted another document. "This is a draft of the Sapient Rights Charter," she explained. "It establishes fundamental protections for all species, regardless of military or economic power. It prohibits unprovoked aggression, piracy, and exploitation. It creates accountability mechanisms with actual enforcement capabilities. And if we refuse?" The Orvelian asked. Chen's expression hardened. "Then humanity will enforce it unilaterally," she said. "We will protect not just ourselves, but any species targeted by the strong for being weak. We will become what the Council should have been but never was. A genuine force for peace and justice. You would make yourselves the galaxy's police." Victor demanded incredulously. "If necessary," Chen confirmed. "Though we would prefer partnership to domination. The choice, as always, is yours." In the days that followed, something unprecedented happened. 17 minor species, those who had been bullied and exploited by the Council's dominant powers, sent secret communications to the human delegation. They wanted to talk. They wanted protection. They wanted humanity to make good on its promise. And in the depths of human military planning facilities, strategists began wargaming scenarios that had once seemed impossible. What if they actually had to fight the entire Galactic Council? The simulations were run again, and again the results were always the same. Humanity would win. The cost would be staggering. The casualties horrific. The moral weight crushing, but they would win. Admiral Kane reviewed the final reports and felt something cold settle in his chest. "We tried so hard to avoid this," he said to his chief of staff. "Yes, sir," the younger officer agreed. "But they would not let us." Kane nodded. "Slowly execute Phase 2 contingencies," he ordered. "If they want war, we will give them a war they will never forget, sir." His chief of staff hesitated. "Are we sure about this?" "Once we cross this line." "The line was crossed when they tried to destroy Earth," Kane interrupted. Now we simply need to make certain they understand the consequences of their actions. He stood and looked out at the stars. We were nice for 150 years. He said quietly. We tried patience, diplomacy, restraint, and where did it get us? He turned back to his staff. Now we try something else, he concluded. Now we try strength. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's capacity for peace was matched only by their capacity for war, and the lesson would be written in fire and blood across the stars. 3 major council species could not accept the new reality. The Kavroth Empire. Humiliated and vengeful, the Zinthra Collective. Terrified of losing their position of dominance, the Orvelian Combine. Convinced that order must be restored at any cost together. They formed what they called the Preservation Coalition. Their stated goal was to restore balance to the galaxy. Their actual goal was to crush humanity before the upstart species could threaten the established order any further. They assembled a combined fleet of over 2,000 warships. It was the largest military force gathered in galactic history. Surely, they believed, sheer numbers would overcome human technological advantages. They were about to learn that humans did not fight the way other species fought. The coalition's first target was the human mining colony at Proxima Station, a relatively isolated outpost with minimal defenses. So their intelligence suggested Admiral Kane watched the coalition fleet approach on his tactical displays and permitted himself a thin smile. They are going exactly where we want them, he observed. The station commander is requesting permission to evacuate. His communications officer reported denied, Kane replied, causing several of his staff to look at him in surprise. Tell Commander Ivanova to proceed with Defensive Plan Omega at Proxima Station. Commander Elena Ivanova received her orders and nodded grimly. You heard the Admiral. She told her small crew of 87. Time to show them what humans do, and backed into a corner of the coalition fleet. Arrived expecting token resistance. What they got was a nightmare. Proxima Station did not have massive weapons or heavy armor. What it had was 300 mining charges, each one powerful enough to crack open an asteroid, all rigged to detonate remotely. It had mining drones that had been reprogrammed for combat, swarming like angry insects. It had automated or haulers loaded with scrap metal and set on collision courses, and it had 87 humans who refused to surrender. The coalition lost 40 ships trying to take a single mining station. When they finally destroyed it, they found no survivors and no victory, because while they had been focused on Proxima, human strike forces had hit 6 of their supply depots and 2 major shipyards. This became humanity's pattern. Never fight the enemy's strength. Always attack their weakness. The Zinthra Collective's greatest advantage was their hive mind, allowing perfect coordination between millions of drones. So humanity developed mimetic warfare, psychological attacks that exploited the very nature of shared consciousness, audio patterns that caused confusion, visual signals that triggered involuntary responses, information that contradicted itself in ways that made the hive mind stumble over its own thoughts. Within 3 months, Zinthra fleets were operating at 30% efficiency, their drones confused and disoriented by attacks they could not comprehend. The Orvelian Combine prided itself on perfect bureaucratic precision, every ship following exact protocols, every action planned months in advance. So humanity became chaos. Human ships would appear from impossible angles, attack with unpredictable weapons, withdraw before the Orvelians could respond. They filed false diplomatic complaints that tied up Orvelian legal systems. They hacked Orvelian communication networks and inserted contradictory orders. They turned the Combine's greatest strength, their love of procedure and proper process, into paralyzing weakness. The Kavroth Empire relied on brute force and intimidation. So humanity became ghost. Kavarth fleets would arrive at human colonies to find them apparently abandoned. Then, as the invaders spread out to search, humanity would strike from hiding ambush traps, guerrilla tactics that the honor-bound Kavroth considered beneath contempt. But contempt did not stop Kavroth soldiers from dying on the industrial world of New Harmony. Kavarth ground forces landed to secure the factories and mines they found. Population of 2 million humans, simply gone the factories. Where empty the cities were silent, then the attacks began. Snipers picking off officers from impossible distances, explosives planted in buildings that collapsed at exactly the wrong moment. Civilians who seemed harmless until they opened fire with weapons hidden in everyday objects. The Kavroth general and command sent increasingly desperate messages back to his superiors. The humans do not fight honorably, he reported. They hide among civilians, use guerrilla tactics, refuse to meet us in open battle. The response from Kavroth High Command was simple: adapt, but the Kavroth could not adapt fast enough. They were bred for direct combat. For strength against strength, they had no doctrine for fighting an enemy who refused to play by their rules. Within 6 weeks, the Kavath forces on New Harmony surrendered. It was the first time in Kavroth history that an entire army had laid down their weapons and humanity made sure every species in the galaxy saw the footage. Admiral Kane's fleet arrived at the Orvelian Combine's home system of Orvelia Prime. The Combine's defense fleet moved to intercept, confident in their numerical superiority and the multiple layers of defensive platforms protecting their world. Kane made no move to attack. Instead, he transmitted a single visual lit, showed Earth. As seen from orbit, the image was from an Orvelian spy satellite that had been secretly observing humanity's homeworld for the past 70 years. We knew. Kane's voice accompanied the image. We always knew you were watching. We let you watch because we were not afraid. The image shifted to show the satellite itself, its location precisely marked. We tracked every one of your surveillance platforms, Kane continued. We monitored every transmission, decoded every encrypted message. We knew what you planned, what you feared, what you hoped. Another shift showed Orvelian strategic planning documents, supposedly secure files from the Combine's military headquarters. We have been inside your networks for decades, Kane revealed. We know your fleet deployments, your defensive strategies, your economic weaknesses, your political fractures. The Orvelian defense fleet had stopped advancing on Orvelia Prime. The Combine's leadership watched in growing horror as their most secret information was displayed casually on open broadcasts. We could have struck at any time, Kane stated. We could have crippled your economy, sabotaged your military, turned your own systems against you. We chose not to, because we did not want war. His image appeared on screen now, his expression hard. But if you insist on war, he said, then understand this: we will not fight the war you want. We will fight the war we choose, and we choose to win. The human fleet withdrew without firing a shot, but the damage was done. The Orvelian Combine's government collapsed within days as the revelation of their compromised security became public. The Preservation Coalition was fracturing. The Zinthora Collective pulled back its forces to defend its core systems. The Queens, paralyzed by mimetic attacks they could not counter. The Kavath Empire was bleeding, resources trying to hold conquered territory against constant human insurgency. The Orvelian Combine was in political chaos, and humanity kept the pressure on, not through massive battles, not through conquest of territory, but through relentless, calculated application of force exactly where and when it would do the most damage on Earth. In a quiet office far from the war fronts, a young analyst named David Park reviewed casualty reports and felt sick. 2.3 million human casualties, he read aloud to his supervisor. But over 400 million enemy dead. His supervisor, an older woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, nodded tiredly. We are very good at war, she said quietly. That is precisely what terrifies me. But we are winning, Park protested. We are defending ourselves, protecting innocent people, are we? Dr. Kim asked. Or have we become the thing we feared? She pulled up footage of human forces using scorched earth tactics. On a Kavroth colony world, we do not target civilians, she acknowledged. We do not use weapons of mass destruction on populated areas. We follow the rules of war. But look at what we have become, Park watched as human soldiers efficiently dismantled an entire industrial complex. Denying it to the enemy, we are ruthlessly, terrifyingly efficient at destruction, Dr. Kim continued. We have spent 150 years preparing to be the galaxy's most effective killers. And now we are proving it. What choice did we have? Park demanded none, Dr. Kim agreed. That is what makes it tragic. We tried peace. It failed. So now we must be what we must be. She stood and looked out the window at the city beyond. I just hope that when this is over, she said softly, we can remember how to be something other than weapons. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship and reviewed strategic assessments. War was going well, perhaps, too. Well, his tactical officer approached with new reports, sir. The coalition is requesting a ceasefire, she informed him. They want to negotiate. Kane was silent for a long moment. Do we grant it? His officer asked. That depends, Kane replied, on whether they are ready to accept our terms, and if they are not. Kane's expression was grim. Then we continue until they are, he said. We did not want this war, but now that it has begun, we will see it through to a conclusion that ensures it never happens again. He looked at the star charts showing human forces across known space. We will win this, he stated. Not because we enjoy war, but because we refuse to lose. The tiger had shown its teeth. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The war ended not with a dramatic final battle, but with exhaustion and acceptance of Reality 18. Months after Protocol Harbinger was activated, the Preservation Coalition formally requested peace negotiations. The location chosen was neutral ground, a space station in unclaimed territory. Newly constructed by combined human and minor species efforts, Ambassador Chen walked the corridors of this station and marveled at how much had changed. The design incorporated architectural elements from dozens of species, including human. Creating something genuinely collaborative, IT was what the old Galactic Council should have been, but never was. The treaty signing took place in a circular chamber with no head table. No position of dominance representatives from all major species sat, as equals. Chen noticed how different the atmosphere was now. No contempt, no arrogance, just wariness and a desperate desire for the killing to stop. The Kavroth representative was not. Vakthor, old commander, had died 3 months earlier. Killed in a human raid on a military command post. His replacement, a younger female named Kratha, approached Chen before the formal proceedings. Ambassador, she said, her translator rendering her words with careful respect. I wish to apologize. Chen raised an eyebrow. For what specifically? She asked. For my species' blindness, Kratha replied. We saw only what we wanted to see. We thought strength meant the ability to dominate. We were wrong. She gestured at the chamber where the treaty would be signed. You could have conquered us, she stated. Your forces were superior, your strategies more effective. You could have done to the Kavath what we tried to do to you, but we did not. Chen said no. Kratha agreed, and that is a lesson we will not forget. True strength is knowing when not to use force. The formal negotiations began shortly after the terms were comprehensive. But Chen believed the Preservation Coalition would pay reparations to humanity for the past century and a half of attacks and losses territory. In disputed border regions would be ceded to human control. Most importantly, the Sapient Rights Charter would be adopted as the foundation of a new galactic accord, but humanity did not demand total victory. Took no Kavarth worlds. They imposed no regime change on the Zinthara collective. They did not occupy our Velian territory. We want partners, not subjects, Chen explained to the assembled delegates. We want a galaxy where all species can thrive, not one where humanity dominates through fear. The Zinthor Queen's representative, speaking through a single coordinated drone, asked the question many were thinking why. It buzzed. You have the power to dictate whatever terms you wish. Why show restraint now? Chen smiled sadly. Because we remember what it is like to be powerless, she answered. We remember the humiliation of being dismissed, of watching our people die while those with power looked away. We will not become the thing we fought against. She stood and addressed the chamber. Humanity learned 2 lessons in our own history, she said. First, that power without restraint leads to destruction. We nearly killed ourselves in our own wars. Second, that weakness invites exploitation. We learned that lesson from you. So what will you do with your power? The Orvelian representative asked. We will use it to protect, Chen replied. not just ourselves, but any species threatened by those stronger than them. We will enforce the Sapient Rights Charter. We will ensure that what happened to us does not happen to others. You make yourselves the galaxy's guardian." The Kavaroth Krotha observed if necessary, Chen confirmed. "Though we hope others will join us in this responsibility, the treaty was signed that day by all parties. The war was officially over, but the real work was just beginning on Earth." Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane stood in a memorial garden dedicated to those who had died in the war. 3 million names were engraved on black stone walls. 2.3 million humans who had died defending their species. He had ordered many of them to their deaths. The weight of that responsibility would stay with him forever. Young officer found him. Their Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, who had served on his staff throughout the war. "Sir," she said quietly, "the demobilization orders have been issued. Most of our forces will stand down over the next 6 months." Kane nodded without turning. "And the defensive protocols?" He asked. "All being updated and maintained," Johnson confirmed. "We will never again be unprepared." "Good," Kane said. He finally turned to look at the young officer. "Do you know what frightens me most, Lieutenant?" he asked. "Sir?" "How easy it was," Kane said softly. "How naturally it came to us. We spent 150 years preparing for war, and when it came, we were terrifyingly effective." He looked back at the memorial. "We killed over 400 million beings," he continued. "We did it efficiently, strategically, with minimal waste. And we were good at it. We were defending ourselves," Johnson protested. "I know," Kane agreed. "That is what makes it so frightening. We had every justification, every reason, every right. And we still became killers on a massive scale." He was silent for a moment. "I am retiring, Lieutenant," he announced. "The war is over, and I can no longer command forces I know how to use so effectively, sir. The fleet needs you. The fleet needs someone who has not become what I have become," Kane interrupted gently. "Someone who can remember how to keep the peace we fought for 6 months later." A young Kvarth student named Sekler arrived on Earth as part of a cultural exchange program. She was nervous. Her family had lost members in the war. She had been raised on stories of human ruthlessness, human violence, human power. What she found was different. Her host family, the Patels, welcomed her with warmth and genuine curiosity about Kvarth culture. Humans she met at university were eager to learn from her, to share with her, to be her friends one day. She worked up the courage to ask Mr. Patel, a veteran who had fought in the war. "About the contradiction I do not understand," she admitted. "In the war, humans were so fierce, so uncompromising. But here, you are kind and welcoming. How can you be both?" Mr. Patel was quiet for a long time. "We never wanted to be what we had to become," he finally said. "We hoped for 150 years that we would never need to be warriors. But when the choice was to be victims or to fight, we fought." He looked at the young Kavath with sad eyes. "We would much rather be your friends than your nightmares," he told her. "The choice was always yours. Your people chose to see us as enemies, as prey. So we had to become something else, and now—" Sekler asked. "Now we hope that friendship is possible," Mr. Patel replied. "We hope that the peace we bought with blood will last. We hope that future generations will not need to make the choices we made," he smiled. "And it was genuine. We hope that you and students like you will help build something better." He said. In a classified military installation deep beneath the surface of Luna, the contingency protocols were being updated. New technologies were being developed, new strategies were being refined, new preparations were being made, because humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all: peace was not guaranteed, was not a natural state. It was something you had to be strong enough to defend. Director of Strategic Planning, Rebecca Torres, reviewed the latest defensive systems and felt the familiar mixture of pride and sadness. "We will never be caught unprepared again," she murmured to herself. Her assistant, a young man named Marcus, looked up from his workstation. "Do you think we will need this?" he asked, gesturing at the plans for weapons and defenses. "I hope not," Torres replied honestly. "But hope is not a strategy." She pulled up a quote that had become something of a motto among human strategic planners. "Civis pocem parabellum," she read. "If you want peace, prepare for war. Ancient Earth wisdom." Marcus noted hard-won wisdom. Torres corrected. We learned it twice. Once when we nearly destroyed ourselves. And again when the galaxy tried to destroy us. Will we ever not need this? Marcus asked, meaning the weapons, the preparations. The constant vigilance. Torres was quiet for a long moment. Perhaps someday, she said, when all species have learned what we learned, that true strength is using your power to protect rather than dominate. That peace is built on respect, not fear. And until then, we prepare, Torres stated firmly. We remain strong enough that no one dares threaten us. We remain vigilant enough that no surprise can catch us. We remain capable enough that any attack will be answered. She looked at the young analyst. But we also remain human enough to choose mercy when we can, she added. To prefer friendship to conquest. To build rather than destroy peace through strength. Marcus summarized peace through strength. Torres agreed in the new Galactic Council chambers. Now relocated to the neutral station, representatives from 47 species worked together on the implementation of the Sapient Rights Charter. It was slow work. Old habits died hard but slowly. Change was happening. Ambassador Chen, now holding the title of High Commissioner for Sapient Rights, reviewed reports from across known space minor species that had been exploited for generations. Were receiving protection. Pirates and raiders were being hunted down by combined multi-species task forces. Disputes were being resolved through arbitration rather than force. It was not perfect, but it was better, and that was something. Late one night, alone in her office, Chen allowed herself a moment of reflection.